Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand.
I can't explain the way these crown lows, they come to me. Morning meditation, Psalm 91 and 23. Watering my money tree, manifest abundantly. On a mission, running free, everything they wanna be. In summary, there's been a shift within the earth sphere. So now people hear my messages and words clear. Still shining, the illest with the brilliant timing. The gold mine who had to go find the silver lining. Ain't nothing new underneath the sun. I be going through it too, you ain't the only one. Don't take none of this life personal, cause we all got some lessons that we working through. Ain't nothing new underneath the sun. I be going through it too, you ain't the only one. Don't take none of this life personal, it's just the lessons that we working through. So why you tripping, huh? Why you mad, son? Had some good days and some bad ones. Might win some, might lose some. That's just the way it goes, life 101. Why you tripping, huh? Why you mad, son? Had some good days and some bad ones. That's just the way it goes, life 101. Yeah, life gon' be life until your day is done. Never will you see a thief return a treasure stolen. No need to lock away your heart if it was never open. Truth heals the spirit and it's better spoken. Most never heal, they remain forever broken. I protect over my cells like a prison guard. True and living star, pay the price to get these wisdom bars. Listen hard, I was cut out of a different cloth. Turn your light up on these hoes and never switch it off. The queen's a winner, moving like a seasoned ninja. I'm even tempered, never beefing like a vegan dinner. I found peace within my inner, that's a sweet surrender. Don't relive your lessons twice like repeat offenders. They'd rather see me decompose like leaves in the winter. Want me to undermine my shine and decrease my shimmer. While they compete in their subliminal battles, I'm only fighting hidden parts of my invisible shadow. Cause I learned that people never want the bitter truth, just the sweetness. But you need both the light and dark to reach completeness. Goddamn, people throw rocks and hide their hands. Vindicate the wolves and they silence in the lambs. Fight to keep your soul purer than a sacred virgin. Even if you die in the rebirth into your latest version. Your fate is determined by how you shake the weight of burdens. You gotta save yourself, become your own favorite person. Ain't nothing new underneath the sun. I be going through it too, you ain't the only one. Don't take none of this life personal, cause we all got some lessons that we working through. Ain't nothing new underneath the sun. I be going through it too, you ain't the only one. Don't take none of this life personal, it's just the lessons that we working through. So why you tripping, huh? Why you mad, son? Had some good days and some bad ones. You might win some, might lose some. That's just the way it goes, life 101. Why you tripping, huh? Why you mad, son? Had some good days and some bad ones. That's just the way it goes, life 101. Yeah, life gon' be life until your day is done.
One life, 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 a life, one life, one life, a life, one life, one life, life, one life,
All right, peace and blessings. Welcome to another episode of Knowledge Radio. Place when I was informed, it's your host. Now we're on the line. We got something special. Over here. Okay, look. If y'all understood what this space means on this camera over here, to be right here, to be live with me, okay, after working, I don't know, almost a decade behind the scenes, if not a decade, giving me some of the greatest guests with the greatest stories that I ever heard. It's a beautiful opportunity to be here with her on today, dealing with a series that is much needed in our community. As a matter of fact, my thesis recently and my master's degree in journalism was on this particular topic, mental health in the Black community, removing the stigmas. So it's just right on time, right? Divine alignment. So it becomes my honor and privilege at this time to introduce Service and others one of my motivators, one of my coaches, one of my inspirations, and one of my straight shooters, because if y'all know her, she don't take no ish. Finally here on the platform, giving her offering, out there saving the Black world, the one, the only, Miss Chanel Johnson. Welcome, 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 welcome to the forefront. How you feeling?
I am doing amazing this evening, and yourself?
I'm here so I don't get fined, okay?
Well, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Chanel Johnson, and also welcome you to Self Meet Self. This is going to be a weekly podcast hosted by Doula Knowledge Radio for any Black person who is curious about mental health, healing, and what support looks like today. And this space is for us to ask real questions, tell the truth about what we've been through, and learn new ways to take care of our minds, our spirits, and our relationships. So tonight, we're going to unpack some of the stigma, some of the misnomers that we have about mental health, and talk about the changes, talk about the advancements, talk about the power of control that we actually have over our mental health, opposed to the past experience that our community has had with the health field as a whole.
So what got you started? Like, what's your passion and motivation? Give the people some in the background, okay? I don't think they know how brilliant you are. You understand what I'm saying? So let them know some.
Well, the concept for Self Meet Self came from my personal mission statement of wanting to reintroduce mental health to our community. It's something that we ignore. Oh, that's just how our sissy is. Oh, that's just how they are. Well, they crazy. And we need to change some of the language, some of the interaction that we have with mental health, because our mental health is our responsibility. And a lot of the core problems that we have within our community starts with not tending to our mental health and ignoring things that can actually be helped if you had the correct information. No longer if you go sit in front of someone is it a danger of you being taken by the state. That's not what's going to happen. You're not mandated to take medication. It's a choice. It's an option. You can say no without worrying about a consequence. And, sitting with someone and getting it out. We think that we got this because we are taught to not be able to feel. We like being, I don't want to say we like it because I don't like it. Strong is something that is thrown on us. Black people are strong. They're some of the strongest people in the world. Well, when someone thinks that you're strong, they have a tendency to want to give you more. Not checking in and seeing where you are at that moment before they apply more to you. And we do need to also speak about check-ins on loved ones. We sometimes like to pull away when we feel like somebody's going through something. And sometimes people need to knock on a door to make sure that they're okay. So this is actually about us getting to know ourselves, reintroducing ourselves to ourselves, and rebuilding that relationship with ourselves so that we can have the comfortability to actually do what's best for us. It's the name Self Meet Self is actually about slowing down long enough to actually meet you, and not just the version of you that's surviving or performing or staying strong for everybody else, but the real you that's underneath all of that. And each episode is an invitation to check in with yourself first and see yourself with more compassion and get language and tools to move forward in healing and wholeness. So one thing I want to make clear from the very, very beginning is that I am not a therapist. I'm not a licensed social worker, psychologist yet, psychiatrist. I don't diagnose, I don't prescribe, I don't provide clinical treatment. I'm coming to you as a certified peer support specialist, crisis peer support specialist, a family support specialist, and someone who's actually walked this road personally and or with family, friends, or loved ones. So I'm not coming to diagnose you. I'm not coming to give you, tell you what medication to take. That's not my position. What I can tell you is things that you can look for, starting points, give you a little understanding of the different types of modalities that are out there available to you, and help you find local resources and connect you with groups and organizations that can actually help you along your mental health journey.
That's what I'm talking about. So, what are we missing in regards to? I know you touched on some things, but what are we missing? What's the gap that we're missing? What's being lost in translation in regards to efficacy, mental health, and making that a priority?
The very first thing I would say, and this is just my opinion, is that just what mental health is, the definition of mental health, does not mean that you are crazy. Mental health is a disease of the mind, just as well as you have diseases of the liver, you have diseases of cells, you have diseases of blood. It's another part of the body, but it's not a casserole disease. No one's going to come bring you dinner if you get diagnosed with bipolar disorder. No one's going to come and sit with you by your hospital bed if you're schizoaffective. They're going to pull away from you. They're going to treat you as if they're afraid of you. Every mental health diagnosis does not mean that you're a danger to yourself or anyone else. Are there instances where that is true? Yes. Untreated. But if it's treated, you don't have to worry about those things because it's being taken care of. And if you have someone that is on top of their treatment, they will know when they need to go get more help. They can advocate for themselves, and that comes with education. We have to get the mindset of someone being crazy. If you have anxiety, depression, again, bipolar disorder, dissociative personality disorder, there's so many things out there, and you can have a multiple of diagnosis. It just means that there's something going on with your brain. It's not producing chemicals that it needs to continue to function in a healthy manner, and you need something to balance it out, which may be therapy or medication. Another misnomer that we have is that you'll be on medication for the rest of your life. That is not exactly true. It depends on your diagnosis, it depends on your treatment, and it's going to be on a case-by-case basis, but it's not a guarantee that if you start treatment with medication, that it's going to be a permanent thing. No one's going to make you take it. You are responsible for that. Medication helps a lot with therapy. It helps you deal with the emotions and the things that come up that you've actually suppressed. And it may come a point in time in your therapy where you're able to get enough coping skills and tools to be able to self-regulate so that you don't need the medication to assist you anymore.
Now let's talk about some of the stigmas. You named some of them. I think we do a great job normalizing versus analyzing, and then we get into psychoanalyzing without any sort of background whatsoever. So let's get into some of the stigmas and some of the challenges that you've seen in your work. Getting us kind of acquainted with the necessity of getting care and the mental health regard.
Okay. I'll start with first saying that mental health is how we think, how we feel, and how we cope with life. And that includes our emotions, our stress levels, our relationships, and how we handle challenges. Just like physical health, mental health is on a spectrum. We all have mental health, and it can get better or worse depending on what happens in our lives. And mental health conditions like depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, PTSD, and schizophrenia, they're real medical conditions, not character flaws. And it's not a weakness, and it's not something you can just snap out of. And according to NAMI, which is a National Association on Mental Illness, 1 in 5 adults in the U.S. experiences mental health each year. And that means millions of people, including Black people, are dealing with mental health challenges. And if you're not seeking help and you're continuously walking around trying to just figure it out on your own, it's not going to get better that way. It's not something that you can drink a tea for. It's not something that you can go to, a lot of things when it comes to the mind, there are studied modalities that actually work, and you need to give them a chance. Another thing that happens a lot with mental health is that if you start a treatment, or whether it's medication or talk therapy or any other behavioral therapy, it's not a quick fix. You come in front of someone with all the years of your age of worth of trauma. They can't unpack that in 3 months, sometimes 6 months, sometimes years. So if you don't feel like it's working immediately, it doesn't mean that it's not working. You got to stay the course. If it's something that you really want, you got to push through that and actually do the work. And the work has to come from you. And we want to say some things are genetic. Mental health conditions are caused by a combination of genetics, brain chemistry, life experiences, and that's including trauma and racism, and also environmental stressors. And they're not your fault. It's not, if it's genetic, we do have to start having these conversations ahead of time before we start procreating, because these things can be genetic, and you do want to know what actually can be hereditary. We also have the mindset that these people are faking it. They're just being dramatic. They're just doing too much. They don't want better for themselves. If you walk into somebody's house and they're usually a neat person, pretty much, and their house is in disarray, that's a red flag. If someone that is usually pretty social and they really start to withdraw, somebody's not bathing, not brushing their teeth, not combing their hair, if you know someone and something about that character starts to change, then you need to go check on that person and have a real conversation, because those conversations and that support is what's going to make someone feel comfortable to get the help that they need. Not, oh, you're crazy, or you're just dirty, you're nasty, like all the negative things that we say, but it actually, there's something going on that they can't control, that we think is just easy because we're okay, or we think that we cope okay, and we put that on someone else. And we have to stop doing that and really take mental health seriously, because as a community, we're almost born into this.
I was sitting in the classroom, Chanel, and I'm sure you remember, like my mind was, after I left the military, I was going to school for psychology so I could open my own private practice to deal with Black families with PTSD, right? So that was my wheelhouse. You understand what I'm saying? Because as a Black person with PTSD, I saw how it affected me, how it affected my family, and so many families there. So what it meant for my white counterpart isn't the same for me, isn't the same for Black people. So a care sort of mechanism, sitting with somebody who can identify, because a lot of times, just based off of the counselors and people that are there that are talking to you, they have no frame of reference of what you're dealing with. They don't have, they weren't in combat, they didn't see any of their friends die, any of those things. So they don't have a frame of reference. That doesn't mean that they're not qualified to give care, but do they care? Can they really identify with what you're going through? You understand what I'm saying? Or are they just there to test out whatever it is based off of what they told them they have to push to, seek the remedy, right? A lot of us just want somebody to listen to them and not judge. You see what I'm saying? So when you talk therapy, that space of being a place, a safe space to unpack whatever's going on. You might hear things that nobody would have ever known. So if you're carrying this and harboring this around, it affects you personally and it affects your family on another level. So you don't know what they're carrying. Not just you went to combat, your whole family went to combat. You just was in direct action and they were in indirect action. So something you had to learn in that regard is how do you give care in these instances and keep the family together and hear where everybody else is coming from, not just your own thing, right? So if you're keeping these things within you, so are they. They're going based off of you. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm in this environment and I was like, oh, the social science world and this space that they were currently operating in was not equipped to deal with that. I had a professor tell me after 20 years of being a uh, psychologist that trauma can't be passed down. Cannot. He told me cannot. And I was like, okay, um, I'm gonna provide the research and let you see it. And I'm going to prove to you that because of where you are and who you are, you're not going to give me a good grade. You're not going to give me a good grade. I told him before I wrote the paper and did all of the research and all that, I was like, I'm going to show you your bias. I'm going to show it to you. And next time you'll be able to, I want you to realize don't be talking to Black people about our problems. You cannot identify. You got no clue. So I wrote this paper, stellar paper. As a matter of fact, his wife was a teacher there as well. I gave him and his wife a similar paper. His wife gave me an A, and he gave me a C. And he's trying to explain himself to me, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I just wanted you to see your own bias. I don't want you walking around thinking that you don't have no bias. It is okay. I told you from the beginning before I wrote anything down. Stop talking to Black people in your class about their trauma and that you can identify with them and their experience. You cannot. All right. I don't care how much Tim Wise and Jane Elliott you spewing out here. You're not a Black dude, man. It's okay. It is okay. You can stand up in front of Black people and say, okay, this is the facts, this is the information that I've got over the years. I don't know personally how to deal with you and your issue and be okay with it. So, my point in all of that was the strive was to be a resource for our people in that regard. But the field at the time was ill fit to be a place where it's going to deal with that directly. You see what I'm saying? So I was like, I wound up, I wound up doing Dudenow's radio instead of opening the clinic, right? So one way or another, some talk therapy happened through talk radio. But you know, folks are out there, they're walking around with this, and this guy's got 20 years. He wasn't a bad dude, he just was basing it off of his own bias versus what the truth was. So I wanted to share that little part right there. So when you said that, I honed in, I was like, she gonna bug out on this one right here. So in the family support aspect, what are things that we can do better in regards to? I know you talked about recognizing some of the signs, but being a support, right? For instance, someone has a medical condition, right? Like a medical condition physically. How do you help in that way? Because if it affects you physically, it's going to affect you mentally, right? Just receiving this diagnosis, whatever the case may be, and you're going through these aspects, whether it's a physical ailment or a terminal sort of disease in that way. How could you better support? How could we be a better support in that regard, uh, based on your experience?
Okay, you have three points that I want to touch on. The military aspect, the family aspect of the military family, and the critical thinking portion that you experience with your professor. And I'm going to touch on that first. I'm currently in school now for psychology, and one of the classes that I'm taking is actually critical thinking, and it's taught by a husband and wife, and it's interesting to see, because in all four of my classes, critical thinking is the basis of it. How critical thinking in higher education is taught pretty much throughout. But I feel like when people graduate, they leave it on the floor of the campus. Because when you go out and you interact in the workplace and you interact just in everyday life, those people with those degrees that you know got that information don't express that in their everyday life. So just because someone knows the effects of what is happening doesn't mean that they believe in it enough or disagree with it to actually do anything inclusive or try to challenge themselves to understand the information and the impact it has on someone else. And I've gotten that in a very small period of time. I'm learning that just because you know it doesn't mean that you're opposed to it. It actually gives you something to work better at, not actually engaging in it the way that it's actually supposed to be seen. And bell hooks, I think, should be taught in high school. I think that critical thinking should start in elementary school, and it should graduate with the child as they continue to grow. It should not, and it should peak into higher education, not start there. It's a disadvantage for us as a people and for our children to not have or understand critical thinking very early on, because we're taught to be submissive and to just kind of take what we can instead of having the ideology to see something as it is and then actually make some action and put something on course to actually change that. Now, as far as, before I go into the military and the military family, I do want to explain those roles that I do have so that it'll make more sense about what I'll say to that. As a peer support specialist, my role is to use my own lived experience with mental health challenges and recovery to walk alongside other people going through similar things. So I don't come in as an expert that has all the answers. I come in as someone who can say, I've been there, and offer hope, practical tools, and encouragements from that place. And when I say recovery, that could mean from either addiction or from mental health. There is recovery in mental health. As a family support specialist, I support families who are trying to understand what's happening with their loved one and figure out how to respond, how to navigate the systems that can feel confusing and overwhelming. And I help the families find words, resources, and more compassionate ways to show up for each other. My role with NAMI, I am the program coordinator for the Sharing Hope program. Excuse me. That is a program that NAMI has created for the Black community to speak to mental health from their perspective. And in that space, it is all Black people. It's written Black. It's facilitated Black. And if you're not Black, you cannot be in there. They have other programs for other denominations, other types of demographics. This one is created specifically for us. And I'm also the program manager with Lit Movement, which is a family literacy company that educates communities through literacy and engagement. And in that role, I train and facilitate parenting classes and workshops. And I help parents and caregivers build skills around communication, connection, and supporting their children's learning and emotional well-being. And that work keeps me close to the real stressors that families actually face every day: school struggles, behavior challenges, intergenerational conflict, and the pressure to hold it all together. And it gives me another lens on how mental health and literacy show up together in our homes and in our neighborhoods. So with that, and my role with, I'm also the board secretary and a facilitator of a family-to-family program and also a Homefront program. Homefront is for military. And the facilitation of that program is for me to come in and help the military and their loved ones actually navigate them coming home. that when someone's in the military, they've been there, and the military is very good at programming. And when they come home back to civilian life, there's a disconnect. There's a gap in communication and interaction that happens from that soldier to the family. This person has been in and out, and the family has been doing whatever they've been doing. It's the distance actually coming together, one. It's the hierarchy. 9 times out of 10, well, it wasn't 9 times out of 10. The wife is at home handling the household. Now the dad wants to come home and handle the household. She has her program. He wants to come in with his. He's still rigid coming from where he's coming from. She's resistant to that because she feels like what she has is flowing. He has PTSD. He has probably bipolar disorder, like so many other things that the military don't address. So he comes home with all these things. He's aggressive. He's short. She doesn't know how to handle this because he wasn't there long enough when he's back from deployment for her to really get to see these, or he wasn't that way prior. And now he is. So now she has a new person walking into her home with her family. So it helps navigate that and bring balance back into that situation. It helps the family understand what that person has gone through. This person has seen his close friends die, people dismembered, children murdered. He's had to murder children. Like, where things may have seemed like a video game and his reality on the field, when all that noise quiets and he goes back home, the reality of what he's done is now set in, on top of the impact of coming back to a country that doesn't respect what you did because of the color of your skin. So there's so many dynamics that comes from a soldier, and then us, we look at them as strong. Well, you did that. You chose to do that. You chose to give your life for this country, so you're okay, right? You're fine. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to do it. You made it through boot camp. You're good. You don't need anything else. What do you mean? All right, yeah, you're having these dreams. Okay, little shell shot. You're okay. No, you're not. And because we don't understand and we don't know the resources and we don't know what to look for, we don't know how to show up and support you in that. And it's very difficult for our military men and women that come back to navigate this society that has no clue what they did to make us be able to sleep at night.
We could be here all day with that. You understand what I'm saying? We could be here all day with that. And I learned my lessons and turned them lessons into blessings. So yeah, that realm, if they could pay me, I would walk them through treatment plans and care plans and assess them situations and look at them. If they really wanted to have a holistic approach and the wherewithal to actually understand what happened and what happens in the family dynamic and all of these things arose, especially for Black people, but for anybody who had a uniform that's been, especially in the combat situation, the military as a whole, that's one thing. But then in the combat situation is another thing. The training environments are facilitated in a way to give total control in high stress environments. So you can have a significant emotional event happen during training, and that's not communicated properly. Things happen to you and things affect you in different kinds of ways. And the military does not have the capability. It has the space for you to go see somebody. You can go see a chaplain. You can talk to your leadership. You can go talk to a mental health professional, but they're all in the military environment. Their job is not to be able to facilitate your growth in that regard. Their job is to get you back into the fight because this is still a war machine sort of operation. So they might give you a little something for you to be able to cope in that place. But then you're also, the other part is you're ostracized and you looked at as weak if you're going to get care. And if you're a continual person that needs ongoing care, it's even weaker and it affects your career. Not out in the public, but beneath the surface. There are meetings being had about you like, oh, okay, you're considered a problem child if you have issues. So those who might even become aware of their issues don't seek help, and these things just continue to compound. So throughout the life of your service, you're carrying these things around. And I love that you spoke to that other aspect of reuniting and reintegration and coming back, right? The transition from all of those things that you was carrying around. This was your life for how long it was, whether it was 4 years, 8 years, whether it was 20 years, in some cases 30 years. You've been compartmentalizing all of this time. And when you slow down in that transition, excuse me, you have to live with all of that. You have to live with all of that. And you can't, you have to be able to deal with that, but you deal with that internally. You implode and then you explode. So whatever your coping mechanisms was in that regard, a lot of those things are gone. Right. So now you're dealing with this. So they have the Department of Veteran Affairs. So you go over there and you're supposed to be able to talk to somebody, right? They're dealing with a retiree population that is 100 times more vast in some of these places than not. So they can't facilitate care immediately. And there's a process for you to be able to get in there. Then there's a process and a waiting period for you to be able to go see somebody. And then everybody's booked out. So you get a limited amount of care in that environment. You understand what I'm saying? So you have to sit and steward your thing. So if everybody was equipped to be able to recognize, some of these things, the family would be able to deal with that. So that holistic support approach, and then you, nobody looking at you like you out of your mind, right? And everybody's close versus everybody being distant, because everybody's going through their own thing, right? Everybody's going through their own thing because they have their own individual coping mechanism. We don't have family coping mechanisms in place, and this unique environment of military is far and vastly different than civilian, right? So the approach to a military family versus an approach to a civilian family isn't the same, even though they might exhibit some of the same traits. Those things that are exacerbators over here are something completely different than those ones over here. And like I said before, like 9 times out of 10, the guy or the girl that was the service member, they haven't slowed down long enough to recognize that they're in a position that they need help. They're just, Charlie Mike, you just continue on, you continue the mission, mission first, that's really that mind frame. So if you don't have somebody that's in there that's able to articulate that, you might find yourself at a deficit, even with the well-intentioned, well-wishing sort of care, right? So you have that mental health stigma from the military, and then you add your own cultural aspects in regards to it, then it becomes even more nuanced. So if they hadn't been in that environment, there's a small disconnect in regards to that. So putting a program together is good, but there's other aspects to make sure that they will have to have an understanding of what this entails, and somebody or somebody's sharing their experiences so they can have that particular data and some aspects of talking points to be able to kind of get into the mind of someone who was in this uniform and somebody in this combat situation. And less than 1% of the American population it's in its military now. When I joined, I don't even know how many years ago now. 2%, 2% of the American population was in its military. So 2%. The other 98% was clueless about what was going on. And then when you think about the formation of this country or this corporation, right? The presidents that were in, they were service members. early on, and then it started to dwindle away. So now, if you start to look at the presidents who were not in the uniform, who didn't serve, they have a great disconnect in regards to it. Then it becomes a bipartisan approach. The Democrats feel like this about the military versus the Republicans feel like this about the military. So now the legislation affects those things. And then you start thinking about pay raises, then you start thinking about downsizing. It is a whole structural dynamic that's not taken into account in regards to these stressors or these exacerbators in regards to what the military is. And at the highest level of the military, there's civilians that dictate the policy, not people in the uniform, too. So you have to deal with whatever uh, rolls downhill from one of these good idea fairies. And after you dealing with good idea fairies every single day in the uniform, that are your superiors. So I just wanted to add that little layer of context because, like I said, we could be here all day just with the military alone, and then talking about the black population in the military too. That's a whole nother, another piece right there. So just wanted to add that in, and I'm thankful that there is such a program or some sort of consideration in that regard for the military and for the black population and for the black population by the black population. So yeah, shouts out to that. What did I want to ask? Because I went on the tirade. What did I
Well,
want
before
to
you
ask?
ask something else, let me add to what you're saying for more context from a civilian perspective. In the military, you are trained and you are in a routine for however many years that you're there, and it is to cut off emotion. Emotion can get you killed. So, also, the other issue with that is that with what they go through in the military, you don't make money in the military like you think that military people do. Some people are just good at finance. They kind of got some things going on before they go and they do well. But that comes with rank. And there are certain conditions that if you get diagnosed with that will disqualify you from the military. So if you got 10, 15 years in and you get that diagnosis, guess what? You're done. And then you're fighting for your life trying to get full disability after just to try to make ends meet. The military doesn't make you rich. Being in ranks can actually put you in a great position, but mental health can knock you right out of the qualifications for that. So, and then with the stigma of our community, which is that it's for white people, it's not for black people. Well, I beg to differ because according to research, only 1 in 3 black adults with mental illness receive treatment compared to nearly half white people. But black Americans experience mental health conditions at similar or higher rates than other groups, but were less likely to actually get treatment. Now, if you have that mindset and you're with someone in the military, that's a crash course for disaster.
As you were speaking, I remember. All right. So the youth, the youth. If the parents aren't getting care and they're suffering from mental health, that barrier to the younger generation that are suffering vicariously and directly in these spaces, that disconnect in regards to that. So can you talk about the that relationship between the parents and the children, and then the children in particular, dealing with and finding coping mechanisms on their own or on the internet or any of the social media space in regards to mental health and mental health disorders and wellness.
Okay, let's go there. Um, I will say that mental health conditions do not discriminate. They affect all people, all races, all ages, genders, income levels, and backgrounds. Now, with that being said, if you have a parent that has undiagnosed and untreated mental illness, I want to make sure I say this correctly. Okay, I'll say it in general. You will sometimes have children that have the same challenges as the parents. And admitting that the child has those challenges means that you have to admit that you have them. And because you don't want to admit that, you won't get your child help. And then you send them to school. And then the teachers are telling you this child needs an IEP, this child needs an evaluation, and there's nothing wrong with my child, because if there's something wrong with my child, because my child acts just like me and has a lot of my characteristics, then that means that something must be wrong with me. And I'm absolutely fine because I get up and go to work every day and I pay my bills, so there can't be anything wrong with me. You're just saying that because you're racist and you just don't like my little black child. That is not always the case. There's no such thing as a bad child. There's bad parenting. Somewhere along the line was dropped. And if you are not healthy enough as a person first, and then emotionally mature and mentally healthy, it's going to be very difficult for you to raise a child when your daily characteristics and habits are what's raising that impressionable human that you've now birthed. So you have to take a look at what you're doing, understand that what you don't condemn, you condone, the exposure that you have your children to, the friends that you have around your children, the friends that your friends have that are exposed to your children, the company that your friends' parents keep, the schools that you live in, understand that the schools matter. We don't have time in our community because we have to go to work to supplement what the school system does. So we may have to pay that higher rent to get a better education, which is still not the best, but it's better than places that don't have a tax bracket. Because in those zip codes, you got 46% testing rates, passing rates. Not okay. So, it is a thing where parents will ignore the children's diagnosis, or they will have their child overdiagnosed and put them on medication because there's a benefit, there's a check that comes with that, and then I can live off of that. And again, but that parent also has some things going on that does not help them rationalize. We do need to have a lot more compassion and be more open-minded that everybody that has a mental illness is not able to control that. There are things that just don't process correctly. And usually these things are generational. If, I have someone that I know, she's the child of a drug addicted mother and father. And then she was in foster care. Now she has 5 children going on her 6th. Several of the children get SSI checks for disabilities. And she lives off that, and she's working on her 6th child, and she just wants to have these kids, but can't care for the children. So when you look at her, she's a horrible person. How can she do that? She doesn't even care about her kids. But at the same time, there is something psychologically off about that whole thought process when you cannot take care of what you have and you want more of what you already can't handle. And we tend to look at that, oh, she's just we'll call her a whore, 304, all types of stuff. She really is a person who has gone through severe trauma that's looking for love. And this is where she thinks she's going to get it, is through these children. And she's not realizing that the relationships that she's having in her environment is totally detrimental to her children. She just knows that they're going to love her in all the empty places that everybody else has failed her. So we look at these different dynamics and we look at people's decisions that they make. But a lot of that comes from mental illness that is not being treated. Because if you can have someone, bipolar disorder will make you spend like crazy. It'll make you spend what you ain't got. It will make you promiscuous. It can. It can cause promiscuity. So you'll be sleeping from person to person because you're trying to fill a need. And that need is getting filled in the process of the act. But as soon as it's done, now you're crashing and burning. These are real things that are attributed to diagnosis that we think it's just who that person is. But a lot of who that person is what they have going on mentally. So we need to have more education on what that looks like. And also what it looks like to support that, meet that with compassion and understanding, not condemnation. Because we are very quick to do that. And in a large scale, I will say two things can be true at the same time. And this is a touchy subject, but I'm going to talk about R. Kelly. R. Kelly is a man that has done some things that are diabolical with people underage. But we don't look at what made him that way. R. Kelly is the way that he is because he had a sister who violated him and his brother. And she's not looked at, but he is. But would he be that way had she not had violated him? These are things that we look at the result, but we don't look at the root. We have to talk about, the molestation in our community. We have to talk about the violations. We got to talk about the rape. These are things that happen, and these are things that lead to mental illness. We look at a 14, 15-year-old girl that's sleeping around. Oh, she's just fast. Her brain is not developed, and her development has been arrested from violation. The people in children's lives that are supposed to protect and support them, when they violate that in that child's growth process, it sets them off and it puts them in another direction, because now children already have a hard time expressing or understanding what they feel. When you violate them on that level, whether it's physical or sexual abuse, you send them on a spiral into a whole nother direction. And then it's not, we need to go to her, we need to support her, we need to uplift her, we need to let her know what she can do and really give her wraparound love. No, we withdraw from her. We push her further out. We make her everybody else's problem but ours. And then we let the next person come in and have that same experience with that man or woman. We have got to stop these things. And having education on mental health and the effects of what trauma does to children and to adults is one thing that should make us deter the behaviors that we allow ourselves into or allow others into that we're responsible for knowingly. It should stop that if you know better, because when you know better, you do better. But even the mom that, has the husband that is violating the child, something's not right with her. There's something off with her and she needs help. And it's deeper than just sending her to prison, because she's going to come home and do it again. Fix the problem. If you fix the problem, then it won't continue to grow. But if we keep putting Band-Aids on it and touching everything around it instead of the root of what it is, we're going to end up on this hamster wheel for a very long time.
I had to drop the bomb on that one. You understand what I'm saying? That was a bomb dropper right there. So, for the people who are listening, the people who will listen to these archives, what can they expect from this weekly broadcast? Like, what's your vision? What's your goal? What's your mission? What's your aim? What's your objective?
Muted. Okay. Again, the goal for me is to reintroduce mental health. Have the uncomfortable conversations that we don't want to have in our community. Talk about the things that, and this is anonymous. You don't have to come on here and give your identity. I'm not asking you for that. I'm just asking you to listen. And my goal is to hope that you can walk away feeling more supported, more educated, and more open or willing to at least entertain the idea of doing something about it. My mission is to help any Black person. And the reason why I say Black is because that's what this platform is for. We have our own issue in our community that needs to be addressed by us without any outside influences, because they're just not going to get it. And again, this podcast is not about clinical treatment. It is peer support, family support, and community education. And you will hear me talk a lot about NAMI. I am a big proponent of NAMI. And to give you a little bit of history about NAMI, NAMI is the largest grassroots mental health organization in the country. It does provide very specific programs and groups and workshops for demographics to have their own safe spaces. And they are very, very stern on making sure that they provide that for groups. You don't have to join all of them. If it's not for you, it's not for you. I would say don't discount it if they do something that you don't agree with. That's not your group. So stay out of that. Go to where your need is. Go to where your tribe is within the organization so that you can get what you need from it. Not say, because they do have a LGBTQ group. If you don't agree with that, just don't go to their group. You don't have access to it if you're not actually in it. So, but we have home front for military, family to family, peer to peer, sharing hope. I do apologize. I don't remember the one. There's a faith-based one. There's the one for the LGBTQ community. So there's many things that they do. And it was actually started in 1979. It was just a small group of families at a kitchen table. And they got tired of being blamed for their loved ones' mental health conditions. And the lack of services and the lack of respect that they were getting from the systems that were actually supposed to be helping them. And from that kitchen table, they grew into the largest grassroots mental health organization. And they are dedicated to building and bettering lives of millions of people affected by mental illness. And their mission is to provide advocacy, education, support, and public awareness so that individuals and families affected by mental illness can actually build better lives. And across the country, they train volunteers. If you like to be trained in anything that they offer, you can actually be trained, and you can actually go further, and you can take the classes to train other trainers. So it's not just education, it's also upliftment to where you can do that as well. And, we're trained with our lived experience, and and everything is free. And we bring support groups into churches, schools, community spaces, online. We do have a lot of telehealth things that we do through Zoom, and it's anonymous. You don't have to have your camera on. You can share your experience. You can just listen, because somebody else is probably going through what you're going through, and you don't even realize it. You're not alone. Because we don't talk about mental health, it's such a taboo in our community. When we go through something, we think that it's just us. I promise you that within your block, 90% of the people are going through something. They just don't know who to talk to. They don't feel safe talking to people, and because they don't want to be labeled. If somebody comes to you and says, I'm hearing voices, you get scared. Instead of saying, what are they saying? Well, you know what? Here's this place. Let's go talk to somebody about this. You don't understand what it feels like for somebody that has something like that going on, what it means to have someone that is not going to judge them, help them get help. And it can be just as simply as sitting with them to make the appointment, driving them to the urgent care, to the hospital, helping them find the resources, just giving them the information. And when you lead them to groups that actually are anonymous, we have 988. We have 911. We have 988. 988, a lot of people think is a suicide hotline. It's a suicide and crisis hotline. You do not have to be suicidal to call that line. Crisis does not mean, you're just on your edge and everything's about to blow up. It's not just that. If you're going through anything, you can call or text that number and speak to someone that can help you actually get through that. It's fully anonymous. They won't know who you are unless you want them to, and then they'll come and give you help. But we do have places that we can go to kind of feel safe with that, so that we don't have that fear that if I go to talk to a therapist, they're going to take me away. That's not how that works. It's actually hard to get taken away because insurance is not going to pay for that. So have no fear. They're not going to pay for it unless it's really medically necessary. But they can't force you. Mental health now is free. It's freedom. You have full control. It's client centered now. It's not a thing where, we're just going to take them all. That's not how it works anymore. It's not a thing where you're diagnosed that you have to take this. It doesn't work that way anymore. They're going to tell you what you can take and what you have. It's your choice to say, yes, I want that, or I don't. When it comes to talk therapy, if you say, I have thought about killing myself, it doesn't mean you're going to do a 72-hour or 28-day stay. It means that there's going to be levels. They're going to see where you're at, and that's going to determine if you need to do an evaluation. There are some cases where it may just be a plan. You might just have a safety plan in place, and then maybe some follow-up services to make sure that you're good. So a lot of what we have been through a lot. I am not trying to diminish that. As a community, we have been through a lot when it comes to mental health, when it comes to being misdiagnosed, overdiagnosed, underdiagnosed, experimented on, and medical, period. But today, it is different. And I'm not saying that you don't still have to advocate for yourself. You do have to advocate for yourself, just like everything else. And you do have to make your final decision. You can walk away from that doctor and say, give me the list of what you're saying. Let me go research it. Let me go look at it. And if you're real with yourself, you'll see what correlates and what doesn't. And you'll go back and have another conversation. It's never going to be right now you have to make this decision. This is something that you're going to have to deal with for a period of time. But do you want to feel better? Do you want to change? Do people tell you these things about you and you don't even really recognize it? But a lot of people keep telling you the same thing about you. Somewhere in there, the common denominator is you. And there might be some changes that you have to make. And if you do go to therapy, be honest. A lot of people will say, oh, the therapist ain't no good. They didn't help me. You didn't tell them the truth. You went in there and made it sound like everything was peaches and cream. They asked you questions. You answered them politically correctly. You didn't tell them what you're really feeling. You didn't tell them what you're really going through. And then you think that you're okay, but your life is telling you otherwise. Your environment, your jobs, your inability to get up on time. There's people that sit in the bed for 2-3 days. They can't get out of it. You're not okay. You need help. And it's better for you to get the help and be better to show up for yourself so that you can show up for everyone else than it is for you to continue with that, I'm strong, and lean on that. And then you just find your whole world unraveling around you. You got no friends. You can't keep a job. You can't keep a roof over your head. You're couch surfing from all over the place. Like, all these things attribute to mental illness. And it's imperative that we get this together, because everything that's going on in this country today is going to affect us. And if our mental health is not in order, everything I'm saying might shift and it'll be played against us.
I don't know about y'all, but I'm excited. Okay, to get this on a weekly basis right here. It's a great, great, great addition. I'm telling you, we've been working together for like a decade now. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm thankful. I'm thankful that the world gets to benefit from the multi-talented, multifaceted, motivational, inspirational truth teller that we have here as a true advocate, one who walks what she talks, and been doing it all over the place. Everybody who have allowed her to work with them in their life have benefited greatly. I know this platform has benefited. I personally benefited from her guidance and her way to present something to you to have you think. Once you're in the thinking mode, you could be more receptive. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm excited. If you have any final remarks, closing remarks, anything else you want to share with the family, any of those resources that you were talking about, uh, any of that, and then if people want to get a hold of you, how can they do so?
Okay, one last thing before I do, Jody Southworth 369. I appreciate you being transparent and actually giving that testimony Jody says it took her an entire year to find a correct medication and dose that helped with her depression. Don't give up trying and searching. Be patient. And that is true. It can take a long time to find the right combination. Everybody's body is different. And that's another reason why it's really important for you to be really honest if you do decide to take medication about everything. If you smoke weed, if you drink, if you smoke cigarettes, every detail. What your diet is, because it's going to make it that much easier to close the gap to find something that's going to work for you. If you're not being honest and you take a medication that you're not supposed to drink with, yeah, you're not going to feel so great with those side effects. And also, Miss Nicole 109 says trauma can definitely be passed down. Trauma can be passed down for sure. And I'm not saying it as an expert, but I am saying that, yes, trauma can be passed down, because if we have trauma, we're going to raise our children with trauma. So that is definitely passing that trauma down. I would like to share some resources. First, NAMI. NAMI is going to be NAMI.org. The phone number for NAMI is 1-800-950-NAMI. And you can also email them at info@NAMI.org. And you can get resources and referrals. And they're open Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And NAMI's Sharing Hope program is a presentation. It's designed specifically for Black American ancestry communities that talks about mental health stigma and culturally responsive care. And then we also have NAMI's Peer Support Group, which is a free peer-led support group for adults living with mental health conditions. NAMI Family Support Groups are free peer-led groups for family members and loved ones. NAMI's Family to Family is an 8-week education program for family members of individuals experiencing mental health conditions. If you have a loved one that is experiencing mental health, I promise you, you will love it, because you need support as well. You need education, and you need to know how to talk, how to approach, and when to act. It is very important that we take care of ourselves as caregivers the same way that we take care of our loved ones that we have to take care for. And then there's NAMI Basics, which is a free 6-week education program for parents and caregivers of children and teens experiencing mental health symptoms. It can be a scary place to navigate as a parent when you have a child with a diagnosis. You're going to have so many different people coming in and out your house: clinicians, qualified mental health professionals, therapists, psychiatrists, social workers, ABAs, like all these different things. And it's good to know who does what, who to call when this happens, who do I contact for this, so that you can just keep your head straight, because it's a lot of moving parts. So having a support group and having other people having that experience with you is a great asset for you as you navigate that journey with your young one. And then there's also, there's a directory of Black psychiatrists. The first one is Therapy for Black Girls, and I have checked these links. They are still live. Therapyforgirls.com is the website, and it's a directory of Black women therapists. And then there's Therapy for Black Men, and that's therapyforblackmen.com, and that's the directory for therapists who specialize in working with Black men. There's Black Therapists Rock, and that's a national directory of Black therapists. There's cliniciansofcolor.org. There's BEAM, the Black Emotional and Mental Health Collective, and that's a directory of wellness resources. There's psychologytoday.com, and you can filter it by race, ethnicity, insurance, and specialties to cater it towards your needs. There's inclusivetherapist.com, which is a directory of social justice-oriented therapists. And then you also have litmovement.co, which is a family literacy company offering parenting classes and workshops that support community connection and emotional wellness in families. And you can reach them at litmovement.co. And then, again, your local NAMI chapter. And one thing I would like to say is finding a therapist who understands your culture, your experiences, and your community can make all the difference. And I gave you guys a bunch of directories specifically for finding Black mental health providers. I would highly suggest that you take a look into those, research them, interview your therapist. It is a connection that needs to be made. You do have a right, if you don't feel like you have that connection with your therapist, to just apply for another one. You don't have to stay with that therapist if you don't feel like there's a connection. Give it some time, give it a chance, but don't ever feel like you're stuck somewhere, because you're not. And the same thing for your children as well. If the services that you're getting are not what you're expecting, have a conversation about it and try to find a way to work it out or find an alternative route to go. And then also 988, again, if you're in crisis. 988, you can call them. They now have an option where you can text them. And they're 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're never closed. So whenever you're going through something, that is a resource that you can use on the spot that no one has to know about. And they also will provide you with more services. And before we close, I want to leave you with a call to action. And you've listened to this whole episode, and that takes courage, because mental health is not a comfortable conversation. And now I want to ask you to take one small step. And if you're in crisis, if you're thinking about hurting yourself or someone else, if you're feeling completely overwhelmed, please call 988. That is a suicide and crisis lifeline, and someone will be there to listen and help you. And know that you do deserve support, and you don't have to go through this alone. And if you're not in crisis, but you're just curious about getting help, pick one from the list. Look up one of the therapists in the directories. You know, you don't have to call anyone just yet. Just see what's out there in case you do need it. So then that way you're not searching at that point when you're in crisis or when you're going through something. You'll know where you want to go. Talk to one person that you trust, a friend, a family member, a pastor. Tell them how you've been feeling. And you don't have to have it all figured out just to have the conversation. You literally just talk about it. And I can almost guarantee you that when you open up to someone about it, you're going to actually create a safe space for someone else as well, so that they can get their experiences out too. Journaling helps. If you can journal for 10 minutes, write about what came up for you while actually listening to this episode. What did you relate to? What surprised you? What do you want to explore more? Find a NAMI support group, peer or family, and commit to going to just one meeting and just listen. You don't have to share if you're not ready. You don't have to turn your camera on. You can just be present in that moment and just see if it's something that you might be interested in. And share this podcast with someone. Maybe there's someone in your life who needs to hear this message. You know, send them the link and let them know that you care. You don't have to do all of these things. Just pick one. And one small step is how change starts. And remember, you are not alone. What you're feeling is real and it matters. And there's help, there's hope, and there's healing. And you deserve all three. And I want to thank you for being here for the very first episode of Self Meet Self. I'm so glad that you're on this journey with me. And this podcast is for us. For anyone who's ever wondered if it's okay to not be okay. Anyone who's ever felt alone in their struggle, and anyone who's ready to start talking about mental health in real honesty. And if you have questions, topics you want me to cover, or stories you want to share, reach out. This is a community, and your voice matters. And next week, we will be talking about being strong. What that looks like, how to navigate that, and how to change that to where you can identify for yourself instead of allowing somebody to put that on you. You can contact me at chanel.selfmeetself@gmail.com. And until then, take care of yourselves, check in with yourselves, and remember, know yourself, honor yourself, and heal yourself. This is Self Meet Self, and I will see you next week.
It's the Mark of Moody.
Shit. Nah. Love the royal priesthood. Mark the Buddha, Sekou the madman, Killer Priest, Fourth Chambers, Full Fuji. This beat sound like something I wear. You dig? Yo, hold on my people, why you walking around like you equal? They wrote you in as 3/5. What we gonna do about this? Talk too much, you end up like Jimi Hendrix in 27 Club. You want that knowledge? Well, I'm the plug. Knowledge itself is the drug. And I keep dropping the nugs. Culture pushing, wisdom spitting, pimping simpletons into listening. Yawning while you spewing fiction. I can feel the tensions in your intentions. I wonder if that's John's in heaven. If God is white, why he write that bronze was the sun? They give us reparations, that's when the apocalypse begun. Yeah. Red rhyme, okay. Red rhyme, better rhyme. Grab your guns, daughters and sons. Wasn't long ago when they had us hung. Blood on the leaves, frontal crumbled in between. Exhale for my ancestors that prevailed. We inhale, so we inhale, dodging death every day. Just happy I'm here to tell the tale. Meanwhile, y'all with the pigs and them tattletales. I'ma just be a scientist if it all fails. Mixing chemicals like a cocktail. My tree smell like it's from the tropical. So not for sale, never settle. Follow the tears on the trail. Nah.
That whole African American thing is to omit, you see, the indigenous black man of this particular land. When we brought the African American term, we cut out all of the Caribbean, all of South America, all of Latin America. And this is another way to reclassify you, you see what I'm saying, outside of power.
We got blacks, whites, brown and yellow. We got red, those with dreads found from the ghetto. We got bullet-led and misled, the smile of the devil. On the face of the moon, heart pound like a rebel. Hear the sound on the metal. War in Iraq, 6 feet underground with the shovel. All over the map, the Bible said signs of the time. The Torah said that's your God, not mine. The Holy Quran says it's all Allah designed. The Buddhist says let's meet at the shrine. Thou shalt not eat of the swine. That you is the cut, sure as blue as the blood. Killer priests in the temple, Niru is the love.
That's a political move that was put in by the government to break you down to this subclass, you see, and not be a world community. So to call you an African American is to disconnect you from that global community and that great diaspora that we were talking about. So that's a political move. Yes, come on. The average Native American was this brother's complexion at the turn of the century. Now when you say Native American, it's some white person with a feather in his hair.